Around 9:30 local time, a group of suspected Taliban militants attacked the Bacha Khan University in Charsadda, Pakistan. 19 people were killed and 17 injured, although that number is expected to rise at this point. 4 suspected attackers also died in a battle that lasted nearly 3 hours. From people on the ground, we've heard that they climbed over some of the walls surrounding the university using oddly thick fog as cover, cut down barbed wire. And we have some accounts from students who experienced the shooting. One student told television reporters he was in class when he heard gunshots. We saw 3 terrorists shouting, "God is great," and rushing toward the stairs of our department. One student jumped out of the classroom through the window. We never saw him get up. And as I said, it was a dense fog that helped them get close to the university, but might have made the actual attack more difficult because it put the attackers at a disadvantage against the university guards who knew the premises better, thanks to the lower visibility. And so, as I said early on, at this point it is suspected that it is members of the Taliban. And the reason it's only suspected is because despite the fact that one group has confirmed that they are Taliban, another says that they were in fact not. A senior Taliban commander, Umar Mansour, told the media the attack was in response to a military offensive against militant strongholds, which has become increasingly strong over recent months. He said 4 suicide attackers had carried out the attack. However, the group's main spokesman, Mohammad Khorasani, later told the BBC the Taliban had actually not been involved. He condemned the attack as un-Islamic. He's probably half right there. It was un-Islamic, but it seems that they did it. And so 19 dead, again. Now, this isn't ISIS in this particular case. It's the Taliban who managed to cling to life, unfortunately, after a more than a decade-long conflict with the United States that is still ongoing. But as I said in the intro, it seems like every time we do the show together, something like this, of course, has to happen.
Well, it also could be in Nebraska. I mean,
that's true as well.
And so every time you sit down to do a show, it shouldn't be every time, but because of gun violence here, hearing 19 students killed in a university.
That's true.
Not, unfortunately, terribly surprising. And of course, there is a different context here, and I'm being tongue-in-cheek about it. It could be in Nebraska. But these are the same kind of things that we talk about in this country all the time. And so the outrage that we see when it comes from the Taliban, or if we think that the Taliban has been somehow muted and they haven't been, it's a multi-layered conversation. But by the same token, this is the kind of violence that just because it happens in Pakistan, just because it's the Taliban, it's no different than something that would be random here, but perpetrated by Americans.
Yeah, and just on that, in terms of random, it does seem to be. I mean, the timing of this was there was the massacre. This time, in December of 2014, where 132 children were killed, and so it seems to be some kind of relevance for that, and also in terms of the educational institution, it does seem to be almost ironic that they're attacking the very types of institutions which I certainly would contend are the things that would educate and would be actually the real vehicles for change rather than
a long-term strategy.
Boring though it is, and time-consuming though it is, and slow that it might be, but it's the educational institutions that are being attacked, and I just feel it's an added air of desperation, I think, and clearly they're going for maximum impact. And again, that's where I draw a slight line of distinction. I take your point. I think it's well made. They were, again, it's shock and awe, right? So they go in and they're shooting most of these children in the forehead, again, to make it as graphic and as unpleasant and as headline grabbing as possible. The question that leaves me is, what do we do about this, and how can we initiate change, and how? And a lot of it is squared, I think, against the Pakistan government, which is still overruled or still dominated by the military, in spite of the fact that Musharraf was ousted in 2008. He obviously came to power in 1999 as part of a bloodless coup, but he had that kind of militaristic background, and it's still a government and a policy and a strategy that is dominated by the military. There is no civilian oversight. And I think that in of itself...
And civilian oversight under Bhutto and the others didn't really work. And so that gave rise to Musharraf, and it gave rise to the sensibility of militarization as a way of getting out of the... the militarization obviously predates what we know as Taliban and Al-Qaeda and everything. It was about India and Kashmir. I mean, so it's a totally different issue that brought the military to the fore in Pakistan. And now they're dealing with it in a totally different way because it's caused civil strife there. And that is a big obstacle for progress there for them. And the Taliban has been, I would say, limited by recent action, and you see the Taliban not even claiming responsibility for this, even though it's presumed, because they know that hurts them. As odd as it is that they want to do this, it also hurts them probably politically if they were to take credit for it.
And the other thing that strikes me, is this pattern of soft targets that we've seen. We saw that in Istanbul. I know that was, but it's still those sort of jihadist fundamentalists, radicals,
not
whatever
necessarily
you want to call them.
the Taliban,
not necessarily Taliban,
yes.
but all kind of birds of a similar feather. The emphasis on these soft targets now in Istanbul, in a coffee shop in Jakarta, and also
a number of attacks against mosques.
Correct. Correct. And so again, it's just that sort of repeating pattern of behavior, repeating pattern of strategy that they seem to be adopting now.
Yeah, and look, obviously the death toll, regardless of the group, that's the true tragedy. But you brought up that long term. We would hope, and I think it's been the case in many other cases, that education and sort of the economic liberation, especially of women, is the long-term strategy to taking regions out of this sort of state that they're in right now. And the Taliban especially has so regularly and since its very inception been explicitly anti-education, similar to Boko Haram, also to culture, to history, the destruction of churches, of early Islamic artwork and statues and things like that, like destroying the past and refusing to move to the future. You have something like
destroying
ISIS
the
where...
past too, just to interrupt, the university where this happened was named. It was like 20-something anniversary of the death of the guy for whom it was named, who was a pacifist, a well-known pacifist. So they were at school.
Advisor to Mahatma Gandhi.
Exactly. And so they were at that school celebrating his, I think it was the anniversary of his death. And it wasn't even a milestone. It was something they did every year. And because of that, that sort of put an exclamation point on the destruction that they're looking for, of the destruction of the past. And he was an advisor to Gandhi. So.
Yeah, it's hard to... obviously, again, different country context, but I just feel like we've been fighting the Taliban. Here, we're not fighting them. But the conflict has been going on like almost my entire life, it feels like. And it's hard to imagine when we'll move past this. Some of the groups fall by the wayside and are replaced by other terrorist groups with, in some cases, supposedly different ideologies, certainly different thresholds for what they're willing to target in terms of ISIS being much more readily willing to kill Muslims than Al-Qaeda had ever been, but that it just continues. And part of the reason, perhaps, is that they're going on with their political and military strategy, and we have had varying degrees of a very similar strategy on our part, the West, but especially the United States, an unwillingness for most people to acknowledge that the strategies that weren't working in 2002, 2003, 2004, slight variations on those are probably unlikely to fundamentally change the situation in that region.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, for all of this rhetoric that, the Republican presidential candidates, we're going to eviscerate ISIS, wipe them off. Whether the rights or wrongs of that, I'm not even going to bother debating that because it's so overly simplistic, a carpet bomb. Even if there was legitimacy in that strategy, it's not going to change anything because there'll just be something else. To your point, you feel as though you've never emerged from the fog of the Taliban. There will be something else, and it's nothing to do. It's to do with the strategy. It's so complex you can't even put it into a. But it is. It goes to the topics that you were talking about. But it does go to the culpability, the responsibility, largely in part of the Western powers and Western, countries, with the strategies that they've undertaken, which have palpably failed and arguably, ramped up the violence.
Yeah,
and so just eviscerating them isn't going to do anything. It's actually going to be a rallying cry.
It seems like both a fracturing and a sort of acceleration of the methods. Some of these groups are willing to conduct acts that, even with the barbarity of Al-Qaeda and the groups that we had in the late 80s, 90s, we would have never imagined that they'd be conducting some of the attacks, especially upon their own populations.